This week at the Garden Cinema, we discuss the film Pretty Red Dress, which is director Dionne Edwards' debut. The screening on the 18th of June was followed by a Q&A with director Dionne Edwards, her producer Georgia Goggin and the film's editor Andonis Trattos. The film sees Travis, who's just been released from prison and is readjusting to life on the outside. We also follow his girlfriend Candice, played by Alexandra Burke, who is currently auditioning to star in a musical about Tina Turner. When Travis buys Candice her dream dress for the audition, rather than smoothing over the family's problems, it ends up creating even more. Indeed, Travis is mesmerised by the dress. The film is about a lot more than the dress itself. It's about Travis, it's about Candice, and navigating her career as an actress, their relationship, their daughter Kanisha, and her own struggles at school and with her relationship with her mum and dad and her friends. It's also about music, about Tina Turner, and the spirit of the singer, and about colours and clothes. Dionne explains how over the years, the development of the script led to those various strands being woven together to create a very nuanced, colourful and genuinely fun film to watch. You can still catch Pretty Red Dress, but if you were unlucky enough to miss the screening with a Q&A, join us on here to listen to our conversation with Dionne, Georgia, Andonis, and our audience that night. Thank you so much, everyone. Welcome to the Garden Cinema. This was Pretty Red Dress, directed by Dionne Edwards, who's here with us. Hello, Dionne. We've also got producer Georgia and editor Andonis, so you'll have the chance to ask them some questions about their respective roles and the film in general. I wanted to start by asking a few questions around the film, Dionne. So my very first one, which is a bit of a unoriginal question, but it was very much about the starting point of the film, whether it was Travis' story, the music, Tina Turner in general, just music in general, the location, the dress, the colours, the sequins. What elements sparked the idea for the story to unfold?
It was Travis, actually. Yeah. I was working in a cinema. I was ushering. I was on shift. I've actually got one of my Picture House friends in here. It's actually at the Picture House, Ellie. So, I was on shift at the Hackney Picture House, and I was ushering, and I was just kind of in between shifts, just thinking. And the character came to me then, and it started with him, and I just got really excited about this idea of this black man who's been involved in gangs, and that he was sort of grappling with a part of himself that no one really knew about. And I thought it was like a really interesting opportunity to have a kind of display of his exterior life and his interior life at home. And you get his life at home with his family, and then his life when his family are not there. So I got really excited about that, and then also like the form of a lot of Black British hood films, Top Boy isn't a film, it's a series, but there's Top Boy and there's a film called Bullet Boy, and there's Adulthood, and a lot of these films like kind of start out with this guy leaving prison and going back to his old life and worrying about getting pulled back in. And so that's where like the start of the film came, because I thought it'd be really interesting if you like take a left turn, have him come out of prison, but it's about something else. So I just got interested in those types of films, and was just, I think, listening to a lot of music, developing his developing Candice and Kanisha. And I don't really remember when the red dress came into it and when Tina Turner came into it, but that was from Candice's story. And I just over time put it all together, and here we are. But that was like 2014, so when I started,
how come? Yeah. How did it take this long to arrive on our screens? What was that process?
No, it was just a lot of me and Georgia have been working together for like over 10 years, and we just start out usually with the projects just talking about ideas, and this one just was an idea that we were speaking about for a while, and then we went through the outlining stage, and I usually do a few different outlines and a few different versions of the story, and this initially was a 3-chapter story, each from a different perspective from the 3 family members. And it just took a lot of time to develop. And then by 2017 we had a first like draft where we were developing with BFI, wasn't it? So it took a while, and it feels like the world's changed now and it's a completely different time.
Well, that's it, and I assume different strands of the story might have changed over time. The focus might have been placed on different parts of of the development of the characters, or from the?
It's
very
actually
start?
quite.
I was going to say, weirdly, no.
Yeah,
Like,
it's weird.
I think the thing that's changed is there being plot. I mean, Dionne is really anti-plot as a person. So
because this has a lot of plot in it.
It's ended up being really
forced
plotty.
into that.
Yeah, but Dionne doesn't, left to her own devices, nothing would happen at all. So and I think that's part of why the 3-chapter story was, because, you know, Dionne knew how to write. In a short film, it actually normally is, like, it works really well to kind of explode something at the end of a short, and you can sort of leave it there, and, you know, without giving anything away. Our short We Love Moses sort of does that. There's this sort of explosion and then it just stops. So I think Dionne felt quite comfortable doing that, and then actually the realisation that, you know, you're going to have to go further, you're going to have to say what happens after the thing, was a hard development. But the characters and, like, what the film is about and what they're about didn't really change, and wasn't really influenced by kind of the wider picture, even though, as we're probably all familiar with, I think the conversation around what we might broadly call queerness has changed so much since 2014. You know, to the point that that storylines like that are run of the mill in soaps. But we weren't trying to do something to address a social problem that we then needed to keep up with. So we weren't paying attention. I mean, we didn't really talk about that at all, did we?
Exactly, yeah. And so it was weird, because when we were looking for actors and auditioning actors, some of them were asking, are you making this to try and, you know, basically jump on the bandwagon? And that was very strange, because that's not what we were doing at all. So yeah, very interesting.
Well, I was going to say that's one thing I really, really liked about the film, was that it didn't feel, the dress felt instrumental in a way to the characters' complexity and relationships with each other. It wasn't about that in the end. It wasn't about the dress. It wasn't about a big coming out and a big sort of climax and a gratifying ending where he gets accepted by the community and she gets the part. And I really, really appreciated that. It felt so nuanced and real. So I'm glad you kind of mentioned the development process and the idea that it wasn't plot centered. It was very much about the characters. Georgia, so you developed the film together, and then did you take it to the BFI? What was your role after the script was developed?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose my job overall as a producer, aside from the practical thing of, you know, just sort of generally making it happen, my job as a producer is the metaphor that we've kind of landed on is to kind of like test all of Dionne's ideas, to kind of and in the process of testing them, to cause them to become the most concentrated version of themselves, like to kind of become like the diamond version rather than science failing me, just generally carbon. Thanks. So just to sort of put them under pressure. So that's my job through the development process, and then
So
it's my job.
Stress and me sort of moaning and having mini arguments with Georgia, because it pushes it. It's
essential,
each time.
yeah. And then it's my job is to find the right partners for it. And you know, if you are a new filmmaker, you can't get better than the BFI. Aside from the fact that their money is the best value in the business, they are the experts in looking after new filmmakers, making sure that they, you know, are developing in the right way, and you know, working with the right people, and you know, they just know everything and everyone. Yeah. So that, you know, there was no question that we wanted to work with them. And then when it was sort of ready for production, we started talking to BBC, and you know, very luckily they wanted to join in. And it's so easy to work with BBC and BFI because they work together all the time. So they just they collaborate so easily. So as a producer, it's a very easy sort of dynamic to kind of come into. So yeah, I'd say that was my role in development.
Okay. And sorry, my questions have no particular order, but I really do want to ask them, and then I will leave the audience to ask their specific questions. This might be more one for you, maybe, Andonis. Or who decided to open the film with that particular dance sequence? The other thing I really, really loved about the film was the dance sequences. So the choice of opening, who decided that?
I mean, it's in the script. But
yeah. It was scripted, but then we played with it out, didn't we, for quite a while. Yeah. So yeah, there was a lot of. I mean, that was intended to be there, but I mean, like a lot of things that happened during the edit, you sort of you have once the film is down, and it was a long first cut, it was like nearly 3 hours or something, and you know, it was a difficult experience watching it together the first time, because also, like, you don't know each other, you know, we hadn't worked together before, and you don't know, like, you think, like, does she think that I think this is as good as it can be? Do you know what I mean? So it's like it's a bit nerve-wracking, but then, like, once it's there, you're kind of stress testing every aspect of it, and one of the there you go. And that was definitely one of them, was like, okay, well, it works, this great contrast that comes at the start. What happens if we don't have it? Ultimately, you know, it was much better with it.
Yeah, it's quite an explosive opening sequence, and it situates the film somewhere else. I guess going just on the synopsis, you'd think, right, this is going to be a gritty urban drama maybe, and it opens up with this colourful, bright, very good dance and singing sequence, and I feel it adds a slight surreal tone to it, especially when she, you know, during the audition scene, when you see how Cadiz projects herself on stage in the actual role. So that was also a conscious choice.
I think what I wanted to do, like, we always wanted this to be a kind of, Georgia used the term grit and glamour, and that's like, yeah, we wanted it to feel that it had those two tones, like, across it, and that was to do with, I guess, the masculine, feminine, and all these different aspects of it. And I just thought, you know, we did look at it slightly as a musical in a way, even though it isn't. No one's breaking out in song. We wanted to say right from the start, like, you're watching a film that's going to be, you know, heightened in those areas, and it's just like a good thing to do at the beginning. It sort of hopefully lets you know what you're watching, but it's also really nice then when you, like, cut into the the prison. Yeah. It's like this big contrast, because you've got this, like, glamour, this kind of showgirl experience, and then you're in a prison with Travis, and it's sort of a contrast in a way.
The cut where we took it out entirely and we just started on the prison, it just never worked, because, and I think this is why the success of the writing was, like, you could never, like, the film started on such a downbeat of him kind of sloping out of prison, and then, you know, they have a fight in the car, you know, and, like, just, like, it just didn't, in the script, sorry, the cut that didn't make the film, but, like, the ultimate cut, but it just was so low, so that by the time you suddenly go into this other world with the sparkling dress and stuff, you're just like, what the hell? And it feels like a completely different movie, and you just don't buy it. Whereas what the opening sequence does is tells you the space that you're in without giving anything away. You're just like, there's something odd about, you know, there's something different here, and I think that was why it was essential. But yeah, we had to go with the execs and try it off. Also, because when you're running long, you're just like, oh, there's 3 minutes, just bang that right out, you know.
It's set in South Norwood, which we now figured out. Yes. We were trying to, as I was saying earlier, my colleague and I were watching it, trying to guess which part of South London it was. Why South Norwood?
Yeah, it's funny. Someone today watched it and said, "How did you make London look like LA?" Which I thought was quite funny. I don't know where that was coming from, but yeah, I love Norwood. I've kind of visited there a lot. Right now, I've lived mostly in Hackney, but sort of live in Walworth, around the Walworth area now. But I love all of that side. I think mainly because of the green. And I was saying that it's really interesting with, I guess, like, a lot of Black British films, or a lot of working class British films, like the Tower Block, the council estate that's the Tower Block is like the central image. And yet I think London is full of these really beautiful kind of low-rise red brick estates with these, designed beautifully with a lot of green, and there's a lot of it in Brixton and Streatham and all those areas, and I just really wanted to represent that, and it felt really right for the type of film that this was, where colour was really important, and it's just somewhere that, you know, I felt, you know, would look great on film.
I thought I'd hear that about South Norwood. There we go. And peddling back to the singing, and how did the choice of using Tina Turner's songs in parallel to casting Alexandra Burke, I guess, come into it? How did that process happen?
Yeah, it's the Tina thing. Yeah, it just came out of developing the Candice character. I don't really remember how. Like, it just sort of happened, and it combined with the red dress. Don't know how the red dress came into it, which one was first. But the red dress was influenced, the design of it was influenced by Tina Turner's, you know, dresses of the 60s and 70s, and the cut and the style and the beading. But Tina Turner was just like this perfect icon for it, because, you know, not only is she like an incredible fashion icon, but she's one of the best performers to have ever done it. And, you know, you were saying today, like, just the way she got on stage and presented herself obviously in a very feminine way, and there was an elegance to her, but also she was unafraid to, like, you know, screw her face up and, you know, be really wild on stage and just display this amazing, like, sexuality. And it was just this, I don't know, it just felt like it was, like, perfect for the film and what the red dress symbolizes, which is, you know, kind of exploring all of these things. And then Alexandra Burke, Georgia's a big Strictly fan, and she brought the Strictly in this. Johannes Radebes, our movement director, choreographer. And you suggested Alexandra first, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I saw her. I don't know if there's any Strictly fans in the room, but a few years ago she was on it, and she did a jive to Proud Mary, and she was so amazing. It was just like, she just was so, it was beyond the dance. Like, she can dance, but like, it was beyond the dance. She just totally embodied it. It was like watching Tina do a jive. And I just immediately text Dionne and was just like, go with me on this. It's a bit random, but we do know she's a West End actor, so she can act.
Exactly.
And my goodness me, can she do Tina? So shall we just see? But at the time, all the theatres were obviously open, and she was very busy on West End shows. But then when we were casting for the second time, having been shut down by COVID, then suddenly all the theatres were closed, which was the only reason we could see Natey, and the only reason we could see Alex was because they are theatre actors who weren't working because of the pandemic. So suddenly the pool of people that we could meet were completely different, and Alex was free to come in, and
that's so interesting.
Yeah.
And how about Natey? Where did you find him? Did he come to you?
Oh, with extreme difficulty. Right. We honestly, there was points where we were like, we'll just have to wait until someone ages into the role. Like, we've met every young man in London. You know, I've said before that it would start to feel like jury service. You know, you could just be called up to audition for Pretty Red Dress, because like so many young men, really understandably, because that's why the movie's been made, but like didn't want to play the role. Right. We would have guys who would come in and do one audition where they were like Travis in trousers, and then they would have to come back for a second audition in the dress, and they didn't want to do that. Or they would come in and do the dress and then say they didn't want to, and it was just getting heartbreaking for us, because there were this pool of actors is incredibly talented. You know, it's not for lack of talent, but it just was really hard to find him. And then we did find him, and then there was COVID, and then that guy had a TV commitment, and so we had to find him again. And I was just like, this is terrible. But then Natey came, but we didn't confirm him until a week before pre-production.
Wow, that's stressful.
Yeah.
We're starting to think maybe this actually isn't going to happen.
Yes, we'll make it without Travis.
I was interested to know how you worked with Natey, actually, because there's something so natural and casual in the way he wears the dress. It's not at all performative. He doesn't sort of wear it, I can't think of a better way to phrase this, but in drag. He just wears it as he would a T-shirt. So how did you choreograph this, I guess, or how did you direct him?
So, yeah, I mean, me and Natey spoke a lot about sort of movement and the physicality of the character out of the dress, just the way he carries himself, the way he holds himself, the way he limps. And we wanted there to be a journey. And I don't know if you notice it, the way he's walking at the start of the film and the way he holds himself and his shoulders, and by the end, the way he's carrying himself. That was all spoken about and planned out. And so we were really working on the physicality. And then Johannes, our movement director, worked with him a lot, just in heels, like getting Nate to put heels on, and he wears heels better than everyone, doesn't he? But yeah, we Johannes really helped there in getting them comfortable in the dress, and just forming all these different movements. And then with the intimacy scenes, there was a kind of choreography there as well. We had an intimacy coordinator working with us. So like movement and the way one moves their body, whether it's sort of in the masculine way, the feminine way, and everything in between was like really planned out and thought out.
Thank you very much. Very good to know.
That's nice that it comes off as really natural.
It does. He carries it off so
deep
elegantly
with all the research and the thinking with everything. So. Yeah.
I think it's really smart in his performance that all the stuff that he does in his like early part of the film in his masculine looks way more put on
Yeah,
than the dress. You can tell he's trying. Like, nobody walks like you haven't been in an accident. He's doing it. And then obviously when he's in private, he's not.
Thank you very much. I want to let people have their say. I know a good few of you have questions brewing.
I guess the first thing I wanted to say is you don't have to worry about what I'm going to say outside here. It's going to be awesome. That was absolutely brilliant. As a queer woman, I'm just really interested in how you stopped the two-dimensionality that quite often comes across with queer characters who kind of almost ciphers for messages rather than proper human beings, whether it's Nisha or Travis. How do you get to the three-dimensionality of your queer characters?
It's really hard to say. That's a tough one. How did I do that? So I think I just try and be as truthful as I can when I'm writing. I feel like there's almost like there's a process of like improvisation going on when I'm writing scenes and when I'm writing the characters, and I really spend a lot of time on character. And for me, like, yeah, it's because a lot of people have been asking me like about, I guess, like if I was trying to say something with it, and if I wanted to, I guess, put an agenda out there or get everyone to, you know, sympathize or relate. And I really didn't. I was just really interested in the characters, who they were. And it felt like when I was writing it, there was like, yeah, like an improvisation of sorts going on. It felt like they were coming through me. So I guess the way I did that was just trying not to think about it and trying to let them and the truth of them come out. And I don't know, it's always hard to explain. I guess like there's things where I'm borrowing from like real life and people that I know, and then just sort of reaching far down to try and figure out what they're saying. But it's a hard one, but it's thank you for that. It's a compliment.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions?
So Kanisha as a character, I think, is really, really brilliant. Well done. I think that, I mean, such a bridge for everybody. And I just wondered how that character evolved, because I sort of, maybe that wasn't sort of, and you've already said a little bit about the evolution of the film and the writing, but I wondered at sort of how that character came into being and at what point and what draft, or not exactly, but, you know, where did that character kind of come into play?
When I was, early on, you know, she's pretty much who she was from the start. Like when I was developing the family and when I came up with her, there was a point when I was writing this that I thought about whether it was going to be a son or a daughter, because obviously it's interesting if, you know, if that was a boy, but I always thought a daughter made more sense. And, you know, I guess like there's a masculine presence there in the house with him. She's really, masculinity is really important to her, and her dad is really important to her. He's the one who she really connects with. I think what's difficult about it for him is that she connects with the side of himself that I guess he's a bit ashamed of, the side that you know, has been involved in crime and stuff and has this reputation, the performative side of himself, and so he's really uncomfortable with that. And I guess she starts to learn, actually my dad's putting on a performance, and this is, you know, she has to question that for herself by the end. There was a lot more Kanisha in it, wasn't there? And that was one of the things we were speaking about. It was like quite heartbreaking when we had this like 3-hour long film. We had to work out how we're going to balance this, and we had to remove layers of her story, which was like upsetting for me, because she was really, I felt like, you know, she was like the easiest one for me to write in many ways, and I really pulled her from me, and it was like quite sad to get rid of that.
I think we were trying to like, you know, like we were saying, we had to decide, you know, when the film's that long, it's kind of how can each character kind of inform the story of the others without having like other things that are just kind of consolidating what we already know. And what if we pull, you know, we tried a lot of stuff, like what if we pull this out, do we then pick up, does it make you kind of lean into the next scene where, because for example there was a scene, quite a long dialogue scene where Travis and Candice, after she's picked him up from prison, they're driving. We learn a lot about her situation, auditions, and it was really nice. And on the page, like, it makes a lot of sense. But once, you know, the transition onto the screen, it's like, okay, if that isn't there, the next scene in the flat when they come home, you're trying to read a lot more into their relationship and trying to figure things out. And it's the same with you know, they talk a lot about Kanisha, how things are difficult at school and whatever, but without that, suddenly the scene where they're in the kitchen and, you know, it's the first time Travis and Kanisha really talking to each other, you're trying to figure out what the dynamic is. And so I think it's like a lot of it was just trying to keep a sort of through line of where each of them are emotionally and how can that sustain and weave together, and where are places that we think, well, we kind of know this. Like there were a couple of we were talking earlier, there were a couple of like montage-y like moments that kind of consolidated where we were but didn't really push us forward. So I don't know about discoveries, but I mean discoveries, it's just that how good the performances were really, and how many options. And like, I mean, the scene where Candice discovers him in the dress, like usually like a scene like that is, because it's such a like roller coaster, and there's, you know, they shoot it all day, there's so many options really, and it can be like, yeah, just really tricky to work out. But I mean, we had such a good time like cutting that and trying to plot the, you know, the journey of everyone, whose perspective really, like clearly it's, you know, it's Travis's seeing this big revelation, but at the same time, like what are Candice's emotions, like, you know, the journey she's going on, Kanisha getting involved in that. And I think that was just the joy of it all is like, where are they all, you know, and where should they be, and where, you know, where do we want the audience to be with them, and that's what we spent our time doing really, isn't it?
Thank you. And also thank you for asking a question about Kanisha's character. I did think someone would ask, that was one of the questions I had, but I thought someone will probably mention the daughter and the role of the daughter in the relationship dynamics between all the characters. Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions in the audience? One at the back there.
I just wanted to ask about Candice's decisions in that sense, and basically her like repeated references of like how much I've given up for you in that sense, because it was that a decision to kind of make Travis look less of an off-key parent in that sense, because at times you can kind of like sympathise with her, but at times she comes across as like really cold.
So I read a review said the same thing. I'm curious to see what you...
Yeah, I don't know if I fully understood. So what was the first part of it? Sorry.
Can I attempt to translate? Do you mean that by making Candice at times less likeable, we're doing it on purpose in order to make Travis's indiscretions and failures as a parent seem less bad?
Yeah, and also like she comments a lot about how much I've given up for you, like I wish, you know, almost seems like she never wanted to be a mother in that sense.
Yeah, I don't know if it was that calculated, if I was trying to do that. I definitely like developed a backstory for them, and one of the things was that they had Kanisha when they were very young, and Candice was, and she was aspiring to do what she is trying to do, what you see in the film, and she had big dreams, and they kind of had dreams together because he was a rapper as well, and they were going to do stuff together. And that she feels, although she, you know, because she does really love her daughter, and she feels like she's trying to connect with her so much, and she just doesn't want to. She kind of rejects that. So I think that's a bit sore for her, but also the fact that she feels that she's been held back a little bit. But then she's also grappling with the fact that she loves them both and loves him as well. And that was just all I was thinking about. I was just trying to think about how that all meshes together. But I wasn't necessarily thinking about, if I'm understanding correctly, that was a way to make Travis seem more sympathetic. If that was that's
the way I interpreted the question, but I don't think so.
I just think it was that there was something going on where he and Kanisha like understood each other, even though I guess his situation is different to Kanisha's. There was just something there where they had an understanding, and maybe sometimes Candice like felt a little bit shut out, and you know, she really wants to connect. She almost feels like she wished that her daughter could be her best friend, and they could, you know, dress up together. And she just, I guess she's just trying to understand, and she doesn't. And it's probably, she probably just thinks, why does she? Because we had a lot of conversations about that.
But I think there's kind of two parts to it. I think one is that both Candice and Travis, part of their story is about taking responsibility and growing up in that way. And I think she spends a lot of time in the film and in her relationship with her career and her talent, trying to identify why it hasn't gone the way she's wanted it to go. And she, puts that on Kanisha. And, puts it to an extent on these, you know, people who audition her and see her several times and then tell her no, and, you know, all of this process. But by the end, she's kind of made the decision, no, you know, this is actually about me. I'm a grown woman. Let me make the decision to do with my talent what I can do, which is be in a great kind of pub band. And that's her story. But I think with Kanisha, and sort of to your point about you know, Kanisha's role in the story, I think Kanisha is much in the same way that Travis and Candice, what their essential argument is about over the territory of masculinity and femininity, and who occupies what territory and how much of it they each get. And that if Travis is taking a territory of wearing a dress, what territory does that leave Candice? Kanisha is a physical representation of that, and Kanisha is leaning towards her father and his masculinity, and Candice wants a piece of Kanisha. She wants her to be feminine, you know, and it's really painful to her that she keeps losing this piece of territory. And a part of her story is like making peace with Kanisha as not being something that she can scrap over, you know, and that accepting Kanisha as who she is, and Travis has to do this and come close. Yeah,
the way,
come closer.
Yeah, it's kind of accepting Kanisha for who she is, Kanisha having to accept her mum for who she is. All three of them, you know, doing that thing, and it brings them closer. So I guess that was something that I was trying to do.
Thank you very much. 2 more questions. Get in there quick.
Yeah, I really like the film. Thank you. The police came across as very aggressive and unreasonable. Was that a plot device, or was it based on personal experience?
That's a banger of a question.
This is a real edit.
We were having a conversation about this earlier.
Not between us and the police.
Yeah, I mean, you know, because there can be. And yeah, there was this, we talked about this, like this kind of background presence that they would have in the sound design, in the atmos.
There was supposed to be more of a police presence on the estate, like, and something got cut out, didn't it? The boys, and yeah, you were supposed to get a sense there were more police around the estate, and that was just sort of based on some of the things that I've seen with certain estates. And even that night, I think you're supposed to sense that they were around that night. But I think it's just because you were asking that you were saying they were so aggressive when they knock on the door and everything. I think it was just because Candice was just flying off, and perhaps they were just trying to bring it down, and because she was going up and up and up, they were almost, you know, trying to tame it somehow. It wasn't necessarily like trying to make a statement about the police. It was just trying to we were trying to think about how far it was going with the characters. The police were just sort of an afterthought. Candice was just bringing it up and up and up until, you know, you realise that an explosion is happening, and this is how far it's going, and she gets arrested because she actually does hit an officer. So they, you know, that was just something that we found out they would have to make an arrest. Are you a police officer? Is that way? Okay. Yeah, phew.
Yeah.
I thought you were like, this is not, you know, it's not realistic here.
Thank you so much. Do we have a final question?
I just want to say, obviously, I imagine since like this film, R.I.P. Tina Turner in Body. How do you all feel in terms of like the just, I don't know, the film and obviously the representation? I don't mean like it's just all quite timely, isn't it, in the end, sort of thing, just how it's all come together. And I just wondered if you had any reflections about that. Yeah,
I mean, it was very sad. It was sad in that, you know, we went through, I mean, maybe you can tell the story about, like, it was difficult to get the rights, and we managed to convince them, and Tina Turner was very kind in that sense. And I always thought that she was going to watch it, even though I just think she probably wouldn't, or she might be like, what is this? Yeah. But yeah, I always thought that she was going to watch it, and I was excited by that idea. And it was just, you know, it was very sad. Without Tina Turner, I guess this film just doesn't exist. There's just no, even if, you know, when we were having trouble getting some of the music. Yeah,
no, without Tina, this script doesn't work. Like, no, not in any way. Like, she, because her spirit, and the fact that, like, her spirit and what she represents, and the way that, well, you described it earlier, that her performance, and that the script kind of revolves around her, as well as her musical life and tone, and so without her blessing, it would be nothing. So I mean, it's a huge honour to have been like some minor part of her life. You know, there was a moment when an email crossed her desk that had something to do with this, And initially she said no, and then later on she said yes. I mean, I can't, but yeah, who knows if it was an email? I imagine somebody reads these things aloud to her. I have no idea. The fact that that is the case is wild and such an honour. She gave us the nod, and whatever form that took, and yeah, it's a huge honour. She's a big influence on Dionne and I and our childhoods.
Georgia tried to suggest Diana Ross.
I did not try to suggest it, Dionne. I ruled it out by myself.
Okay, but it just wasn't gonna.
No, after the initial no, the woman, the person who gives this news told me no, and so then I was on the train in Farringdon, and there was like a few minutes where I was like, oh, maybe we could do it, and I was thinking of other, icon women. And
I love Diana Ross, but
who doesn't love Diana Ross?
Yeah.
No, great. No, there's no insult to Diana Ross, but it's a completely different
presentation. Yeah, Diana
so I just was like, no, Diana, I'm sorry, and then went back around to Tina.
That's a wonderful sentence to end this on. Thank you so much. Great question. Thank you everyone for taking part. If you want to re-listen to any of this or want to share it with your friends, it will be on the Garden Cinema podcast page, which is on our main website, along with other Q&As with other directors who have graced us with their presence here at the Garden Cinema. Thank you so much to our guests. Thank you so much for taking part and coming here with us.
Yeah, thank you
guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.